prayer. Any volunteer who wants to pray for us? Okay, I can see Ruth. Ruth, please.
Let's have ourselves and we pray. Father Lord, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you for this biology lesson we are going to have. Father, we ask and we welcome you in our midst, dear Holy Spirit, to take charge and help us understand whatever concept we are going to be taught, Lord of God. And Lord of God, we ask that our network will be stable and we'll be able to pick everything and apply it where possible. In Jesus' name I've prayed. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ruth, for leading us in the prayer. So we are going to start right away. So this is what I was asked to share with us today. I hope you can all see my screen. This is a topic from Form 4. Now that we are Form 4s, Form 4 Term 1. And so we are going to share from that. So I hope we are looking at the image on the screen and it is able to, it's a familiar image. Is this image familiar to us? Have we ever seen it? So the silence is very deafening.
I had muted the participants from giving feedback, so probably I'll be reading what's coming in from the chat.
Oh, your My Class monitors.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
that's a beautiful innovation. Okay, so that will make me concentrate a little more. So is there any feedback in the chat?
Norman Nagava says no. He says he's replying your question. No. Maybe pardon the question because there are people who are just joining.
Okay, the question is, when you look at the image I have put on the screen, is it an image of something you have ever seen, something that is familiar to you in your environment? Have you seen something like this?
Okay. From Vanessa is saying it's biophylum. Tracy says no. Queen says it's a plant. Then Praise is saying she has never. Esther P says that it's kind of like bryophyllum. Okay.
Okay, I think
never seen that from Wycliffe. That's it.
I think that will give us a sample, a representative sample. Yeah, so perhaps the image isn't the best, but those who have been able to say bryophyllum, they are very correct. You know, there are very many types of bryophyllum, and this is one of the unique ones. Bryophyllum is usually used as a house ornamental plant for decoration, and it is so because of its unique characteristics. So today we are going to study asexual reproduction, and this is a subtopic under reproduction. Reproduction, as we all know, is one of the most important life processes for all living things. There are other life processes which we can quickly remind ourselves about before we can go into the detail of this life process. What are the other important life processes that all living things must perform or must carry out. What are the other life processes? Nancy Pesh? You can contribute in the chat for us to have a more streamlined discussion. I can also, Linda, you can also put in the chat. Ruth could help me read out. I'm seeing from our team.
Okay.
Movement.
Yes. For the very first answer was from Vanessa Esther. She said growth. And then respiration. Okay, respiration has come in price. Dale Gracious is requesting for you to pardon, but let's proceed. Queen says excretion. Imran says locomotion. Your team movement. Pesh sensitivity. Then CC Claire movement. Okay, let's see.
Okay, I think that is
Live processes. That's it. Yes.
yeah, that is representative enough as well. We usually use an acronym. An acronym is an abbreviation for all those life processes. There are 7 life processes. At least most books say there are 7 life processes. And we have an acronym for them. That is Mrs. Griff or Mrs. Green. Yes, so M standing for movement, R standing for reproduction or respiration, depending on which R you choose to write first. Then S for sensitivity, then G for growth, then R is for reproduction, if you had said respiration earlier, then excretion, and then nutrition. Now, some books will call it Mrs. Griff, whereby F means feeding, instead of saying nutrition. So that is how we look at it. So today we are going to look at reproduction. But the question is, much as we know that these are very important life processes, for example, movement is important, say, for organisms to displace their bodies from unfavorable stimuli, or to move the whole body to find food, that is now locomotion. We know that excretion is for removal of waste products, which would otherwise be toxic. Now, why is reproduction important? Why is it such an important process? Why is it such an important process? So let's keep that at the back of our minds, because I'm going to be asking you shortly. So in this lesson, these are the takeaways, or what somebody would call the objectives, or what I expect us to achieve at the end of this lesson. What do you go away with at the end of the lesson? So these are the takeaways, and these are the learning outcomes, in other words, from our syllabus. So number 1 is that we must know the meaning of asexual reproduction. Okay? So if we finish the lesson and you don't know that, that means that you haven't benefited. Then 2, understand how plants reproduce asexually. And then lastly, also understand that asexual reproduction in plants has important commercial applications. Now remember that we don't study things for the sake of knowing them. We study them so that we can apply them to our benefit. So if I taught a lesson and there is no value or it doesn't benefit you after school, then that lesson should not be taught. So after we have acquired this knowledge, are we able to make money out of it? Are we able to use that knowledge to better ourselves, to better our community? So that is the third takeaway or expected learning outcome. God willing, we shall cover all the three, but there's a likelihood we may cover two for now and then cover the third one at another opportune time. So, we are going to start with the first objective. So, why is reproduction essential for plants and all living organisms? Is it some process that the organisms can do without? Or it is very important that it would be dangerous if it did not exist? Can I hear from us? Participants? I hope the question was clear.
Okay. Yes, it is because it's also on the screen. Is reproduction essential for plants and all living organisms? You can as well raise your hand. Julius, please unmute.
Reproduction helps living things multiply in number.
Okay, thank you, Julius. And if I may ask again, why is it important that these living things multiply in number? Why shouldn't they remain few? Why do we need them to be many? Or why is it important for those organisms to increase in number?
In the chat, Queen says it enables continuity of life. And from the hands up, Ndavura. Someone called Ndahura.
Okay, continuity of life. That's a good one, but I also want to ask some more. When I ask more questions, it doesn't mean your answer is wrong, but I want us to understand things even deeper or to help that person who is not in your brain to understand the thing even some more. So if you say continuity of life, what do you exactly mean? Can we simplify that?
Okay, from the chat, Bakita continues to say it helps to prevent extinction. And then most of them are talking about extinction of animals or species. Then Alan seems to want to answer that question. Alan, where is your hand? Please raise your hand.
Okay,
Or
so
let me choose someone else. Let me see. Imi Faith.
Londo, the
That one,
question is on
okay.
the screen. Wycliffe. Okay, so let's deal with the extinction.
Imi Faith, please unmute and contribute.
Okay, well, it's about what one would mean with continuity. Accordingly, I think about the enabling of continuity is to enable the more existence of the same species of the living organism. That is how I could explain it.
Okay, so when we talk about extinction and continuity, we are literally talking about similar things. One thing we have to appreciate is that all organisms have a limited lifespan. So just like we all have a limited lifespan, some of us may live maybe to 80, 90, others 100, but none of us will live forever, okay? And so that means if one dies, if everyone dies at some point without reproducing, that means eventually we all die out. The same applies to plants, the same applies to other animals. So if that were to happen, then extinction would take place. So when reproduction happens, it means that there is replacement of those organisms that died, okay? So that the species, as one of you has said, will continuously exist. So you know that your great-grandfathers died, but here you are carrying on their genes and continuing to represent them. So the same applies to other living things, okay? So that's why it is very important, okay, to prevent the extinction. But also, the multiplication, if the organisms are few, then the chances of them dying because of an accident or a natural disaster also increases. But when there are many, it means that if the natural disaster kills some, there is a chance that others will survive. Or if there are predators, it means that the predator will eat some, but others will survive. So by having large numbers or a large population, it means that species will somehow survive. Some may die out of disease, others may die because of natural disasters, others may die due to old age, but there will always be some to exist. So that is really very, very important, okay? That is the most important role of reproduction. Of course, there are others, but we are not going to go into that detail, okay? Some people are asking about dinosaurs. The story of dinosaurs is a totally different thing altogether. According to the theory of evolution, it is thought that the climate on the earth changed so suddenly that they were unable to survive, while the other organisms that were present with them survived. For them, they were wiped out. And so that's why they don't exist anymore, okay? But anyhow, let us proceed. Just a moment. I'm seeing people annotating on the screen. Please.
Yes. I'm going to remove this person.
Let us stop
Galaxy.
it. Let us stop that. Yes, you want to tell me something?
I wanted to warn that person who was annotating on the screen. It's okay.
Yeah, so what we have described is basically reproduction, okay? Then I have another question here. There are two main processes through which plants reproduce. And by doing so, they contribute to the species continuity or continuation. What are these two main processes? What are these two main processes which ensure continuity?
Excuse me, sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So back to number one, what if I say it helps in like introduction of new species of animals? Like if you get one animal species and then they reproduce with the other one, and then a new species is introduced.
Okay, what you're trying to say is probably to do with variety or variation. Okay, it results in variation. Now, that variation is strictly about a particular type of reproduction. Okay, but the question I asked is a general question for all types of reproduction. Okay, there are some forms of reproduction that do not qualify under what you have answered, okay? There are some which result into variation. There are those that do not result into variation. I hope it is clear to you. Yeah, so.
Okay, and from the chat, feedback from the chat, Edward is saying reproduction, answering number 2. Deogracious is saying by means of spores. Someone else was saying seed dispersal. And then, let me see, lastly, wait, I think that is it.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe the question wasn't very clear. That's why we are getting such answers. So the question is seeking to find out the types of reproduction, okay? Because there are 2 answers. The different types of reproduction that are carried out by plants. I hope that's now clearer. And I hope we can get
okay. From the chat. From the chat, we still have answers. Let me see. Budding. Then from Pesh, budding. Then someone else says spores and budding. Kishan says cell division. Ndahura says seed dispersal and pollination. And let me see the answers coming up. Pigeon by Linda. Shefa is saying asexual, Charity asexual reproduction. Seeding. Wycliffe says seeding and the growth into new plants.
okay, thank you all for your contributions. So there are actually 2 kinds of reproduction. Like one of you has mentioned, or some of you, one of them is sexual reproduction, asexual reproduction, and the other is sexual reproduction, okay? So when we say sexual and asexual, it means that one is the opposite of the other, okay? Now, the question is, how different are these 2 forms of reproduction, asexual and sexual? The examples some of you have put there are just parts of asexual reproduction, like fission, budding, okay? Those are just examples of asexual reproduction. So why do we say that one of the types of reproduction is sexual? What do we mean? And then why do we say that the other type is asexual? See Priscilla's hand.
Priscilla, your hand is up. Please unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Sexual reproduction is one whereby new plants are obtained from seeds, whereas the asexual reproduction, plants are obtained without the production of seeds.
Okay, that is correct. Now that is specific in reference to plants, since the question was about plants. Do we have other answers?
Yes.
Which are different?
Alan?
Differently worded?
Alan?
Yes.
Do you have a different answer?
Yeah.
Okay,
About
please
sexual
go on.
reproduction. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sexual reproduction is the production of new organisms by the combination of the genetic information that involves individuals and different types of plants.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
Welcome, teacher.
So maybe 2 more, then I can harmonize.
Okay, from the chat, Josh is saying sexual reproduction involves the union of male and female organisms to form a gamete. Okay, I think he's not in context though. Then, okay, Shefa says sexual reproduction is the combining of different genetics of plants. And then from Pesh, okay, Linda, please unmute. Linda, are you on?
I think sexual reproduction is there is union, there is no fusion of gametes. Well, for sexual, there is fusion of gametes. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you. So let's harmonize. I can see the few confusions here and there, but we are going to straighten them out. Now, when you talk about sexual reproduction, it is simply the type of reproduction that involves 2 organisms of opposite sex, okay? We have the male organism and the female organism. Now, what happens is that both organisms produce sex cells, what we call gametes. The sex cells or the gametes are the ones which come together in a process called fertilization. So when the 2 join together, they form what we call a zygote. So from that, we can see that sexual reproduction involves 2 organisms of different sex. Then 2, we see that there is production of gametes. Then 3, we see that these gametes fuse to form a new organism, what we call the offspring. So that is what sexual reproduction is. So some plants depend on sexual reproduction to ensure that they survive, okay? However, there are also plants that do not depend on sexual reproduction. They are somehow able to also survive. So because they are depending on other means of reproduction other than sexual reproduction, we call that asexual reproduction. So when you find the word then if I say abnormal, it means not normal. So if I say asexual, it means not sexual. If I say anaerobic, it means not aerobic. So asexual reproduction is the type of reproduction where now we have one individual, okay? One individual. In sexual reproduction, we said we have 2 individuals. And in asexual reproduction, there is no fusion of gametes because you're having one individual, okay? So we are going to study the interesting way how one individual can result into production of offspring without the fusion of gametes or without the union of gametes. That is what asexual reproduction is. And it's very common among the plants, okay? It's very common among the plants and even in the lower organisms. In animals, it's not so common. It is rare, especially in the advanced animals. In the much lower organisms, we shall see that it's also there, okay? However, most of the animals carry out sexual reproduction. But because we are discussing asexual reproduction in plants, we are going to concentrate on how plants do it and not talk about what animals do or how animals do it until maybe we reach that topic. I hope those who joined us late are now moving together with us. So we are discussing asexual reproduction in plants.
Teacher, Alan's
Yes,
hand
please.
is up. I think she has a question.
Okay, please.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes, please.
Teacher, I'm not understood what the word asexual reproduction mean.
Okay, since you're the only one who has asked and others didn't ask, it means maybe they understood. So, since they have not asked, let us ask them to explain what they have understood, then I'll harmonize. Is there anyone who wants to help?
Charity?
Okay, from what I understood, you say that asexual reproduction is the type of reproduction that does not involve the fusion of gametes. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Okay, that is one of the things I have said. What else did I say?
Claire?
Asexual reproduction, you say that it is done by an individual, it is done by one individual organism.
Okay, we can add that to what was said earlier. Is there anything else we have said?
Imoran? Imoran, please unmute. Okay, let's hear from who else? In that chat, let me read what's in that chat. In that chat,
I'm seeing Josh is saying that, let me just come in. I'm seeing Josh saying asexual reproduction does not involve fusion. Yes, but the answer is not complete. Does not involve fusion of what? Okay. Actually, it is fusion, not even fission. Fission and fusion are two different words, and they are opposite, by the way. Fusion, F-U-S-I-O-N, means coming together, joining things. Fission, F-S-S-I-O-N, means splitting or separating things. So I think Josh's contribution is not accurate because it is not bringing out the actual things I've said. I can see Hannah.
Okay, if your hand is, sorry, teacher.
I was saying that Hannah says in asexual reproduction, there's no fusion of gametes as it is only one individual. Unlike sexual reproduction where there are two organisms producing gametes that fuse together to create an organism. I think she has summarized it very well.
Okay. The hand's still up. I don't know whether they have questions or we should proceed. Kishian?
Please handle those.
Kishian, do you have a question?
Teacher.
Yes, please.
Teacher.
Please go on and ask your question or contribution.
Teacher. Excuse me.
I'm hearing, yeah, I'm waiting for your question or contribution. I think let's move on.
Liz, Krista, your question?
I didn't have a question. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I didn't have a question. I just wanted to answer the question that teacher had asked, and what I had understood from asexual reproduction is that, okay, most of it has been spoken, whereby people said it does not involve fusion of gametes and it's normally one organism. And then also another thing that she had said is that it mainly happens in plants, but when we take a look at the animals, then it does not normally happen. It does not normally occur in organisms of like the higher species, but in the lower species, then it happens to some extent. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, that is a correct representation of what I have said. Okay, I think let's proceed.
Yes.
So then, number 3, we have a question that says, what characterizes asexual reproduction in plants? And how does this lead to offspring identical to the parent plant? So what characterizes asexual reproduction in plants? Are there things, okay, Imran?
Business is an activity. The person is a vegetative.
Man, unmute.
That the person is engaged in with an aim of making profit. Very good. There is also
Okay, he's delaying to unmute. I don't know. Ronnie. Okay, Ronnie has no mic yet.
Okay, those can use a chat at least. Okay. So from what we have just discussed, do we see anything unique? I think we have discussed that. Maybe the last bit is why or how the offspring are identical to the parents. Now that is one of the most unique things about asexual reproduction, is that the offspring are like photocopies of their parent. If you've gone to the photocopying machine and photocopied your ID or photocopied your notes, you'll find that you have exactly a true representation of your notes. You have identical notes. So this is also what happens here. You'll find that the offspring look in every respect like their parents. So for instance, if the parent, if it were a plant, for instance, if the parent is producing a certain type of fruits, maybe the fruits are very big, then even the offspring will produce big fruits. If the parent doesn't grow tall, then the offspring will also not grow tall. So it will have all the characteristics of the parent, okay? And a good example is when we look at the bananas. When you plant a banana sucker, because you have enjoyed the banana, you can be sure that the banana that will come out of it will be the same as what you planted, because of the way the bananas reproduce, okay? That the bananas reproduce asexually. So that is something very unique. Now, when it comes to sexual reproduction, because the gametes are coming from different organisms which have different genes, the offspring becomes a mixture of those two different sets of genes. So the offspring ends up looking different from either parent. It may have a few characteristics of either parent, but the offspring is unique. Look at yourselves. Look at your mother, look at your father. It may be true you have some characteristics of your mother, but you don't have all your mother's characteristics. Or you may have some of your father, you don't have all those of your father. So you find that you have a mixture of your mother and your father, and that makes you a unique individual. So that is why sexual reproduction is bringing about variation. Now, for asexual reproduction, there is no variation whatsoever because it's as if you are copying every detail of the parent onto the offspring. Do you have any questions this far?
Yes, my questions coming in through the chat. The first question, Brenda sent it. She's asking for the meaning of offspring. I'm going to just list the questions, all of them at once, so that you can answer them at once. Then Gilbert is asking, but sir, I've not understood the contribution of asexual reproduction to the continuation of plant species. Someone using Ready Me is asking, what makes offspring similar to their parents? And some people answered them, and through offspring is like it's young ones of the product got from it. Komo is asking, but how come we are different from our siblings? And
Okay, let
and
me.
Nikita is asking that same.
We are different from our parents or our siblings for the same reason that I just mentioned. Whereas we all have the same parents, okay? There's a topic that is known as meiosis. I don't know if you have done cell division. If you have done cell division, then it would help you understand this. And then if you have also done genetics, it would answer those questions. Now, in the interest of time, I cannot exhaustively answer that. That would become now an entirely different lesson altogether. But I may just try and answer it in as short a time as I can. Okay? So what happens is that our bodies have what we call chromosomes. In our cells, they are what we call chromosomes.
Teacher, just before you get to that question, to that explanation, someone was asking in relation to what you're going to just say. She was asking, does asexual reproduction take place in human beings and how?
No, it doesn't occur in human beings.
Okay.
Human beings are among those advanced animals. So asexual reproduction, as one of us even mentioned, as they were summarizing my discussion, it is typical of less advanced or low organisms, if I put it that way. If you hear about organisms like the sponges, the hydra, that is Coelenterata, I'm sure you've done that classification, okay? Those organisms at the lowest level of classification, they are the ones which can still do that, okay? Things like the earthworm can also carry out asexual reproduction, okay? But as you go to more advanced organisms, that becomes impractical. God has designed us differently so that we don't undergo asexual reproduction.
Teacher, I have a question.
Yes.
Does that mean, okay, when you bring in the case of an earthworm, I think it's one of the commonest examples of hermaphrodites. Does that mean that each and every organism that carries out a sexual reproduction is a hermaphrodite?
No. Now, the earthworm is a unique individual in the sense that they carry out both asexual and sexual reproduction. Now, they carry out sexual reproduction in the sense that each of them fertilizes the other. I don't know if that is clear. The male organs of one individual, let's say that individual is A and the other individual is B. The male organs of individual A will produce sperm and enter into the female organ of individual B. But the male organ of individual B will also produce sperms and enter into the female organ of individual A. I hope that is clear. Now that is sexual reproduction, yes, of the earthworm. And
okay, thank you, teacher.
Maybe if the worst came to the worst, then maybe it can self-fertilize. You see? That is still sexual reproduction by the way, because there are gametes involved. But now, why do I say
the fact that the fact that they are in one body, then they become asexual, right?
No, it is asexual when there are no gametes produced. Because remember, in flowers, as we shall learn later, or you've already known, there are some flowers that carry self-pollination.
Yes.
There are gametes involved, but it is still sexual reproduction because gametes are involved, much as it's one plant and one flower. So asexual reproduction means there are no gametes produced at all. So when people are digging in the garden, accidentally they tend to cut earthworms into two pieces. Okay? It's inevitable. So each of those pieces can grow into a separate earthworm. That's why I call it asexual.
Okay, thank you so much, teacher.
Yes, the starfish, if it breaks one of its tentacles as it's moving through the rocks, it can grow back that tentacle. Okay? So there are things like that. So we call it asexual. Asexual means not involving sex gametes. That is what should be at the back of our mind. It is one individual and there are no sex gametes involved. Okay? I hope that's now abundantly clear. All right. Please check in the chat.
Yes, it is.
How we can
is it okay if as I check?
Please do.
Because I check in the chat. Robin, please air out your question.
Yes, thank you, teacher. My question was, as to like hermaphrodites in man, can we ever have the fusion of gametes and then we have out like an organism or like a person given out?
Now,
I don't know. God.
In humans, I've not seen this, I've only heard about it, but if there's a situation where someone has both organs, some of the organs will be poorly developed and the other more developed. And these are things that happen as abnormalities in the course of someone's development. Okay? It is not something that is usual. There are some of the rare things. And usually what happens is that the person can go and they do some surgery on them and suppress the less developed organ and then they take on the other one. But those are very rare instances, and there are instances that have happened because of some challenges in the course of development. So we want to discuss about things that are more common or that are more common. So for humans, could say 99.9% of them are either male or female. So the case of hermaphroditism is not something we discuss that much because, like I said, it is like an error that happened. You understand? And if you have done you studied about hormones, they will give them hormones and they will suppress the other one organ, and then allow the other to be expressed. Okay.
Let's get the last question from Divine. Seems the feedback is excess and we need to still proceed. Divine, lastly.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, please.
So, for me, I have a question. As you said, in asexual reproduction, there is no involvement of gametes, and you said it's most common in plants. But how comes they sometimes tell us the male gametes of plants are pollen grains and the female gametes of the plants are ovules? So I'm confused because there is involvement of gametes. Is it that some plants undergo asexual reproduction and others undergo sexual reproduction?
The last statement you have mentioned question should be turned into a statement. Okay? Some plants carry out both asexual and sexual. Other plants carry out mostly asexual. Now, where there is pollination, then it means the plant is carrying out sexual reproduction because the pollen grains, as you have mentioned, are male gametes. And they are landing on the flower where they will go to the embryo sac and fuse with the other gametes in the embryo sac. So that is sexual reproduction. Okay. There are some things we are going to discuss. I didn't want to talk about them before we reach there, but I may just ask, just for the purposes of helping you settle your mind. Are you familiar with sugarcane? How do you think sugarcane reproduce? Oh, look at cassava. How does cassava reproduce? You see? So some plants can depend on asexual reproduction, and it's okay. It's not a problem. That's how God has designed it. All right, I think let's move on, unless there's some pressing question.
Yes, we should.
Okay. So
the questions are many.
Yeah, let's stick to the questions which are related to plants and asexual reproduction, because the other topic will also be covered. And we want this topic to be given enough attention. And when we come to that other topic of sexual reproduction in animals, it will also be given enough attention. Okay? Let us concentrate here, and the other questions, let's not too much go the other side. So you choose those who are asking with things related to plants. Unless the question
okay, your hands. Okay, sorry for interrupting. Stacey Claire, your hand is still up. I hope your question is still connecting to what teachers just brought up. And then Zerupa, you are the first to raise your hand. Zerupa? Please unmute. Okay, his question is in the chat. How do sweet potatoes reproduce? I think the people in the chat can answer him in mindness of time. And then Stacey Claire, your question?
I was asking, how relate vegetative propagation and asexual reproduction for cassava.
They are the same. Vegetative reproduction and asexual reproduction are just alternative words that mean the same concept. That is what my next slides are going to talk about. So we have the fourth question here. In what ways
Okay, I
can
think we
plant
can
parts
proceed. Alan?
other than seeds be utilized in the development of new independent plants? So we are familiar that seeds are usually sowed, planted, and then they develop into seedlings, which later on turn out to be independent plants. But you realize that not all plants can be planted using seeds. Some of the food crops we have, we don't plant seeds when we want to set up a garden. Can we mention some of those food crops or other things, other plants that are planted without use of seeds? And then we also mention those which require seeds. And then we shall talk about what other plant parts are put in the soil other than seeds. Excuse me. I hope the questions are clear. Let's start maybe with the ones where we need seeds. Which plants require seeds for growing?
Vani? Vani, please unmute. Okay. She has delayed to do so. Can we have Bakita? Vani, please proceed before Bakita. We don't seem to be getting you. Let's hear Bakita. Please proceed.
Okay, plants that need seeds for planting are beans, maize, sorghum, all the cereals, oranges, mangoes, and all.
Okay, Bakita, you've almost exhausted them. Okay, let's hear those that know that you haven't mentioned. And someone mentioned some that she hasn't mentioned.
Livia? Livia's hand has gone down. Or Liz? Please unmute. Livia, please unmute.
The plants which require seeds for growing, we have beans, groundnuts, soybeans, and others.
Okay, thank you. One more person, maybe. Mention what hasn't been mentioned, what someone probably has forgotten to mention.
From Alice? Alice?
I'm seeing sunflowers here.
Okay, in the chat, Priscilla says sunflowers. Alice, please say your answer.
Hello, can you listen to me?
Yes, please.
We have cowpeas, nuts, yeah, and others.
Okay, thank you. So I can see the chat has become very busy and they are giving correct answers. So all these can be planted using seeds. However, there are those which we can't plant using seeds. What are they? Can we have that list as well?
If your hand is still up, I hope you're ready to answer.
Okay, I'm seeing some chats. You can read the chat answers now.
Okay. From Atenurix, she says cassava. Sharia says bananas. Sugarcane, then cassava. Okay. Sweet potatoes, yams, pineapples, Irish, and sugarcane. Okay. I think that is it. The rest are
Okay, I think that
repeating.
everybody gets the point. But when you write Irish potatoes. Huh? Irish is not a plant. Irish is just the way we talk. But when you're talking about plants, you must say Irish potatoes. You can also see bamboo and ginger. Okay, that's fine. Now, so you can see that even when plants don't produce seed, they can still reproduce. And because we are aware about that, we can still grow the same plants without seeds. Okay, let's proceed. So here I have the very summary of what we have talked about. Plants, like all living things, require reproduction to ensure survival of the species. Production can occur through sexual or asexual means, both leading to continuation of the species. Sexual reproduction in plants involves formation of seeds. Additionally, many plants have asexual methods of reproduction where only one parent is involved, resulting in offspring identical to the parent. And so our discussion focuses on how other plant parts, other than seeds, can be utilized for the development of new independent plants. So that is just a summary of what we have been discussing this far. So what does the word vegetative mean? Because one of you said, what about vegetative propagation, asexual reproduction? Now I also hear vegetative propagation. So, like I said, the two mean the same, but why do some people choose to use the word vegetative reproduction or vegetative propagation? Why? What is special about the word vegetative?
Linda, your hand went up first. Please unmute.
Reproduction is a method of asexual reproduction in which a certain plant part separates from a parent and develops into a new plant. That's what I think.
Okay, yes, that's the definition of vegetative propagation, but I'm interested in why use the word vegetative? What is vegetative? If we recall our discussions about plant structures, we said there are some parts which are vegetative parts, and we said other parts are, maybe that hint should give us something to say. If some plant parts are vegetative, others are?
Others are cider. Okay, from that chat, Chirabo Pauhana says vegetative means it does not involve seeds. The plant can reproduce with other parts of the plant that are not seeds.
Okay.
Then ITEL, someone using ITEL says it means use of other parts of a plant. Okay, and then Preshi, your hand is up.
I think I mean vegetative, according to the word vegetative propagation relating to the asexual reproduction, I think you just use part of the vegetation on the plant to be able to produce another plant, like sweet potatoes. We use the other vegetation on the sweet potato.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that's what I can.
Let's have two more people, then I can weigh in.
Deogracious, your hand is up. Is it still up? Okay, let's hear from Imran. Imran does not unmute. Any other person? Jimmy?
Okay, I think being vegetative means something being reproductive.
Jimmy, pardon?
I think being vegetative means being reproductive.
Okay, let's
Have
have
you got
one more
him?
person. I think he said being
Okay,
reproductive.
from Emerald. Mm. Let me just read from that chat quickly. The divine says vegetative means relating or not being different from the parent. Okay, that's from divine. Then Shefa says vegetative involving reproduction means apart from sexual means. Robin says vegetative is being asexual with no seeds involved. Okay. I think that's what's coming in from the chat.
Okay, so let's work with that. So when we talk about plants, plants have basically two major structures or organs. We have the organs we group as vegetative organs, and those we group as reproductive organs. Now, the reproductive organs are those that result into flowers, okay? When we talk about the flower, this is a reproductive organ of a plant, if you remember that definition. So the rest of the plant becomes the vegetative part. So, like one of you has said, if that part results into a new plant, then that part is said to be vegetative. So you can see here that plants, vegetative refers to non-reproductive parts like the roots, stems, and leaves, excluding those that are involved in seed production. So if a plant can find other ways of producing without seeds, then whatever organ it has used is said to be vegetative. So when we say something is vegetative, we are describing the growth and development of those non-reproductive organs. Okay?
Banange. Mommy, my network will call on Isaac's phone.
We're having an issue with feedback. Pray she should mute. Okay, I think now we are okay. So then what is vegetative propagation? I think I've answered that indirectly. So vegetative propagation involves the creation of new plants from structures like the stem, leaves, or roots without using seed or spores. That is vegetative. So in this method, plants are able to produce identical offspring, especially a copy of the parent, essentially the copy of the parent plant. Okay, Chikomeko, please unmute. Saida?
Yes. Yes.
Say?
I had another definition of vegetative reproduction.
Okay, please.
Okay, vegetative reproduction involves the growth of a stem which eventually becomes separated from the parent plant to form a new plant.
Okay, I think that is
That's
correct,
what I had.
but it is only limited to the stem. And yet there are other parts of the plant that can also reproduce vegetatively. Okay? So
Okay.
your definition is to be improved by not limiting yourself to the stem. It is true that stems reproduce vegetatively, and we shall see why, but it's not the only ones that can reproduce vegetatively. Flora? Flora? Okay, Alan?
Teacher?
Yes, please.
I had felt unmute. Okay, teacher, I'm a bit confused. So, okay, I have two questions. Firstly is, so asexual reproduction, like in plants, it involves like, let's say, production of seeds and all that stuff. And then, sorry, that's sexual.
Sorry, can you come back slowly?
Sorry, so sexual reproduction in plants involves seeds, right?
Yes.
And then asexual is like the one where like you use the plant parts, right? Like,
yes.
Okay, so now is vegetative propagation part of asexual reproduction?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Some books will call it asexual reproduction in plants, others will go ahead and even show you that the two are the same.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I think in essence we are all together. So we have these two words. You probably have come across them, or you will come across them: vegetative organs and perinating organs. Vegetative organs and perinating organs. So how different are they? Are they the same? Are they different? What do we mean by vegetative organs and perinating organs? Unfortunately, I'm not part of that group. Someone is asking me to send work on that group. So the best you can do is just to try and follow closely, and then you will go and do further reading.
Saida?
What I know about perinative organisms, these are storage organisms, underground storage organisms. Like, yes.
We are saying organs, not organisms.
Organs, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. What, like, I understand by perinating organs, they are underground storage organs.
Okay.
Do you get me?
Any other? Are they the same as vegetative? Are they different? Do we have an intersection?
Irvin?
I think they're kind of the same with the perinating organisms. I think like we involve the rhizomes, the tubers and the buds, that even when it comes to like the vegetative organisms, still we have the bud, like we can use budding, rhizomes and kind of such. So I think they are common in the same way, like they are the same.
Okay, well, let's see what it is. So vegetative organs are simply the roots, stems, and leaves if they are used in reproduction, okay? And they usually participate in absorption of nutrients, support, and photosynthesis. For instance, if you look at the roots, they're going to absorb nutrients from the soil and water. Then they may also provide support. The stem may also provide support. or the stem may also carry out photosynthesis. The leaves will definitely carry out photosynthesis. Okay, so these vegetative organs usually have these roles. Okay, now perinating organs, as one of you has said, they are similar to vegetative organs. The only major difference is that they are involved when the plant is experiencing harsh conditions, like when there is a drought, okay, or when it's a dry season. Now, those underground, usually they're underground, those underground vegetative organs like the rhizomes, the root tubers, the stem tubers, they are going to provide food and water for the plant to remain alive, so that if the rains come, then it will sprout into a new plant, or it will resume growth altogether. Now, some vegetative organs are not perinating organs, whereas all perinating organs are vegetative. That's what I can simply say. Okay, so if the plant is able to survive adverse conditions and grow when those conditions have passed, it means that that plant has perinating organs in it. For example, when we consider grass, when there's a dry season, the grass leaves will dry and the ground will become brown. But when the rains come, within 2 or 3 days, the grass will come up quickly, because the grass may have rhizomes that kept this plant alive even when the conditions were very unfavorable. The same can be said of onions. The same could be said of ginger. Okay? When the harsh conditions come, the plant leaves dry, but the rhizome stays underground. And when the rain comes, then it starts from where it stopped. So that is how I want us to see the difference. Now, if it is cassava, the cassava stem cutting will not survive because it does not store much food. But if it's an Irish potato, it may survive because it is swollen with food. I hope that is now abundantly clear to us. So that is what I wanted us to look at. So we have a small discussion we are going to have. I want us to look at these 3 images and we answer the questions that are there.
Before we proceed,
yes,
Ellen's hand has been up for long.
Please choose her.
Ellen, you had a question?
Yes, please.
Teacher, can hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for that opportunity. About the perinatic organs, I had another definition.
Okay.
I had another definition whereby, and my definition was, these are organs in plants that help them to serve from one germinating season to another.
To survive from one germinating season to another.
Especially under a favorable conditions such as drought and winter. Chuck, is it correct?
Yes, it's exactly like what I have said, but you've just used different words, but we mean the same thing. So when you talk about unfavorable conditions, it could be drought, it could be winter. In some countries, they have 3 or 4 months when the ground is covered with snow or when the ground is very cold. And we know from our biology that when temperatures are very low, enzyme activity is inhibited, rather inactivated, and it means that the plant cannot grow because plant growth requires enzymes. So the plant decides to become dormant and wait, okay? And wait. When the conditions change, like when there is spring and then autumn, or spring and then summer, the plant continues growing. And when the winter comes again, it goes in that dormant mode. So even for us who don't experience winter, we find that we have droughts. And during the drought season, I'm sure everyone where you are, there's that time when you see things drying up around you. But when the rains come, they quickly come back to life. Okay? All right, teacher. Thank you, Aaron.
Welcome.
Yeah, so can we attempt this exercise?
Marvin, your hand is up.
By one person. There's no any
Marvin, please unmute.
the only such a person is the sole proprietor.
Okay, I don't know why he's not. I think Marvin is not on. Let me see in that chat. Okay, we are responding to the questions that we see here on the screen. So let's please.
Oh, where are the answers? Okay, someone is saying rhizome. Okay. Maybe let me post all the questions at once so that we answer them as much as possible.
Okay, so you're answering, what you do, you mark before you answer, just put the letter that the question for which you're giving an answer so that it's clear. Any answers?
So I hope these images are very clear. You can tell what each image represents.
Okay, Anisha says, okay, I don't know. Let me see. You can also as well raise your hand. Alan, please mute. Alan.
And the answers all there?
me see. Yes, Nokia. No, okay. Let me see the answers, the chats that are coming in are not clear. Okay, Ketra Chirabo says the rhizome. As I said, if you're to answer, you mark which question you're answering. But for I think it's part A, Ketra says for which part of ginger is used for vegetative propagation. Ketra is saying rhizome. Same applies to this person using Nokia. Then Benon is saying the rhizome. Okay, I think we can proceed to the next question, part B. If we all agree with the rhizome, Maria already sent in that answer. In what ways is the part named in A above adapted for vegetative propagation? She's saying a stem. Okay, Alan is also saying a stem. I don't know if I'm the one who's not getting it. Okay, Nokia, someone who's using Nokia says it has terminal buds which develop into aerial shoots. It has buds from Jerry. And then Edith says it has scaly leaves. Its stem has rhizomes from Schaefer. Okay. It has an underground stem. It has buds which turn into shoots from Alvan. Okay, can we proceed to part C? Which just in case the views are not
Okay.
correct, you can intervene.
I'd hoped that we try out and then I give all the answers at once and then we check ourselves because I have all the answers on the next slide. And I was hoping that would make more sense.
Okay, then Jerry's answer. Jerry sent in part C, which part of an Irish potato is used for vegetative propagation. He says, did I read properly? Stem. Okay. Please send in your answers. Which part is used? Stem tuber from someone who's using Nokia. Eh. Okay. Potato tubers. Really? Potato tubers from Esther. Sharia says stem tuber, potato tuber, seed tuber from Zoom user. Then Ali says nodes or eyes. Taremwa Rodney says tubers. Okay. And nodes from Zeropa. So part D, let's send in the answers for part D. Okay. In what ways is the part named in C above adapted for vegetative propagation? Samsung, someone using Samsung says it has a terminal bud. Jerry says it has buds. We're answering part D. Just send in your answers. You can as well.
I think
it has a bud.
The drawing part may be a bit tricky because we can't all see what you're drawing. But I'm under the impression that your teachers have taught you how to make good biological drawings. I'll just simply give you the expected mark, things you label. Of course, I will also show them to you on the screen, but I'm not going to show you the drawings.
Okay, from the chat still, we are still answering part D. The last few answers, Rose Jolie says it has auxiliary buds. Esther and Bakita said it has buds. It has terminal buds from Esther. Okay, for part E, we are going to skip it, and then part F, study the third image and identify the plant part used for vegetative propagation and the adaptations it has for vegetative propagation. So you study it and then give the adaptations. leaves. It says it, the leaves, okay? It has buds. It has leaves. Okay. Has leaves. Can we now have the adaptations? It has a young plant, okay. Adaptation from Samsung says it has buds which develop into the leaves. Then
okay, so
it has leaves. Yes, teacher.
I think what we are going to do, we are going to go through from A to F, and then G, if time doesn't allow, will be a take home for us to look at, because I'm seeing we have less than 30 minutes for this lesson to end. So I'm proposing maybe you take a few more readings, then we discuss those other aspects, because I'm seeing some technicalities that I need to address right away.
Okay. Kitchan says it has the leaves that keep water that is used during the dry season. Vanessa Esther, it has leaves that have buds which grow into a new plant. Brenda says it has leaves for trapping. I think it's not complete. Yes, that's basically what's in the chart.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Now, I want to thank all those who have participated. You really made the lesson worthwhile. There are some small misconceptions that I want us to deal with. And here are the responses. I'll explain them. So remember, whatever we are discussing today is pertaining to vegetative reproduction. So there are some answers that are correct in another context if we're just discussing adaptations of those plant parts without being specific, okay? So some of those answers may not apply here because the question is very specific. So here we see that the stem of the ginger, okay, or the rhizome is one that is used for vegetative reproduction. So the plant that you are given, you notice it has more than just a stem. It has also some other parts. So, but which part of that plant particularly do we put in the ground and then we get another plant? That's what the question wants. So if we got the leaves and we planted them, or the aerial part of the shoot and planted it, it will not give us the new plant. But if we get the swollen stem, which in this case is a rhizome, and put it in the ground, it will develop into many other plants. So in this case, that becomes the rhizome, okay? It's a swollen stem. There are many other swollen stems, but this swollen stem is distinct and it has a special name as a rhizome, okay? And then if we talk about adaptations for a certain purpose, in biology, we need to write adaptations in a particular format. You look at a structure and then describe it, and then mention how that description makes it to do what it does well. Now, for example, if we know that it is a rhizome, we know that rhizomes are swollen with food, okay? So the description of that stem is that it is swollen, okay? Or succulent. So it is swollen with what? With food. So what? If it has food in it, then you say that this food is hydrolyzed or broken down and provides energy for the sprouting new plant, okay? So that energy that is used by those sprouting buds is obtained from that swollen stem, and it is swollen with food. And we know from our topic of respiration that that food is broken down to generate energy during respiration. So if a plant has a swollen stem, then it means it is carrying food. And because we know that these are perinating organs, it means that when the harsh conditions have passed, that food will be used to allow the plant to come up. I hope that is clear. Then you can talk about the buds. It has buds. You can call them axillary or terminal buds, but even just saying it has buds is good enough. But that is not enough. It has buds which sprout into new plants, okay? It has buds which sprout into new plants. So you tell us that it has this that does that. It has this so that it does this. So that is how the answering comes. You describe that structure, okay? So then when you look at the second question, I think, let me just go back briefly. If we look at this question about the Irish potato, which part of the Irish potato is used for vegetative propagation?
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes, please.
Sorry for interruption. I do have a question. I thought that the terminal bud on each plant is one, and then the auxiliary buds are the very many. How comes you're saying it can either be terminal buds or auxiliary buds?
Okay, what I wanted to mean is that when marks are being awarded, if someone just says auxiliary bud, they'll get a mark, okay? Because the auxiliary buds will develop into new plants. Of course, the terminal bud is usually one. Even the terminal bud can develop into a new plant. So what happens is that maybe the terminal bud would be probably showing where this thing was attached to the what? To the mother plant or to the main plant or something like that. I don't know if that is clear, but what is important is that these buds develop into new plants, okay? So because they are along the axis of the stem, we call them axillary. Not auxiliary, but axillary without U. And because the other one is on the extreme end of the stem, we call it the terminal bud. So it's very likely that the terminal bud will form like what would be like the main foliage part, or the part which grows highest. And then these ones will also develop into plants, but they may be shorter or on the sides. I don't know if that adds up or makes sense to you.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So I hope the adaptations are clear. Now, when you talk about the Irish potato, we use its stem tuber for vegetative reproduction, okay? And when we look at the stem tuber of Irish potato, you'll find that it also has the same adaptations as the word of ginger. Actually, this word should have been Irish, not ginger. Okay, it's an editorial issue. So they are basically the same. They both have buds. They both are succulent or swollen with food. And when talk about vegetative production, that is all that is necessary. Okay. Now, if they had roots on them, then we could possibly also say they have roots for absorption of water and mineral salts. You get it, eh? For the developing plant. But if what you've been provided doesn't have that, then you ignore it. Okay. And then when you make that drawing, like I said earlier, make sure it has a title. Make sure that it also has magnification, because someone needs to know this thing you have drawn, what would it probably look like in real life? Are you drawing something the size of an egg? So your magnification helps us to know that. Or what you're drawing is the size of a pea, but you have drawn it much bigger. Okay? So that's why magnification is important. It's a way of communicating to the person to be able to visualize what the thing would look like. Of course, there are auxiliary buds. Then someone said scaly leaves. They are called scale leaves. When you say scaly leaves, it means that these are leaves that have scales. Okay, like I can say hairy skin means that the skin has hairs. Okay, but when we say scaly leaf, it means that the leaf has scales, which isn't true. We call it a scale leaf because the leaf is as thin as a scale. Why is it as thin as a scale? Because the food that it had probably has been used up. If you have ever looked at onions, you'll notice that the outermost leaves are very thin, okay? And they are dry. Why? Because the food that they had has been broken down, and so now they have become depleted, or they have become so thin, like membranes. So you notice if you keep an onion for so long, eventually all that will be left of that onion will be just scale leaves. I hope that helps us get that clearly. It's a common error, but it's very important to know, to write things from a point of knowledge, not from a point of cram work. So they are scale leaves, not scaly leaves. Then of course, we have the case of nodes and internodes. So the node is of course the part where the buds are positioned, and the internode is the part between two nodes. So for the ginger, they are very distinct. And the scale leaves are also attached on the node. And the scale leaves usually are there to protect the bud from desiccation or from drying out until such a time when the bud emerges into a new plant. So that is something that is very important. Now, the last part, I don't know if people had answered bryophyllum. Ruth, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, did you
They
have
hadn't yet
bryophyllum in your
answered.
answers?
Not wait. Yes, we did.
Okay.
We didn't answer part G.
Part
But
G.
teacher, in the question, in that chat, before you move on, people are still confused about magnification. Now, Nicole is asking, if your drawing is smaller than the object, is your magnification a negative, or we just write it the way we see, like it -2 or just 2? I think they brought in some physics, but you made something different.
Okay, I think those who listened intently must have heard what I said. When we have a magnification, we are trying to communicate how the image would compare with a real size object. Now, for your situation, for example, if I asked you to draw a human being on a piece of paper, it means that your image will definitely be very small because a human being can't fit on a paper. You see? So your image will probably be maybe 10 times smaller or even much smaller than that. So it means what you're going to put as your magnification cannot be negative. In biology, we never have negative magnifications, okay? What we have is a fraction. So if the image is smaller, your answer has to be in fractions. okay? And if the image is bigger, your answer has to be, okay, if I say fractions may not come out well, it will have to be any fraction smaller than 1, okay? If the image is bigger, then it will be anything from plus times 1. Say, for instance, if I'm drawing a cherry tomato, cherry tomatoes are those tiny tomatoes, and I have a big space, I can draw a very big image. That means my magnification will be maybe times 2 or times 3 or times 4, depending on how my image is. But if I'm drawing an elephant or a human being, then the image will definitely be smaller. So assuming that the image is a half the size of the actual object, then my magnification becomes times 0.5 or times a half. So when a person sees that, they will know that, oh, so what this person was drawing was actually very big, and this thing is actually a half of what it really is. So I want us to understand magnification from that point. Let us not over-theorize. Let us try to do things that are realistic, okay? What are realistic? If you draw something, ask yourself, how many images of what I have drawn can fit on the object, or how many objects can fit in my image? So if I draw and I can fit 10 objects in my image, okay, then it means my image is 10 times smaller, rather 10 times bigger than the actual object. But on the contrary, if I can fit my image, okay, 10 of them into the object, it means that my image is 10 times smaller. And I talk very fast. I hope somehow I have been understood. The person who asked the question should be the one to answer whether they have understood me.
There are very many people who have asked, because they are now giving the formula of magnification, image size over object size.
Yes,
How
it's
do we
image
know?
over object.
They're asking, how do we know that the image we have drawn is times 2 or times 5?
You measure it. You measure the length if the image is long. Like, for example, if you're drawing, let's use simple objects. You have a pen with you. You measure the length of the pen and measure the length of your drawing of the pen. You don't measure the width, okay? You measure the most prominent dimension. If your object is circular, you measure its what we call it, diameter, and then you compare the diameters. If it is wider than it is long, you measure the width. So there must be some measurement, but even when you measure, again ask yourself, this answer I have got, is it realistic? You get it? At the end of the day, your answer must be realistic. I don't know if that now helps many people. The formula is correct, image over object, but you must do some measurements. But then at the end of the day, ask yourself, is this realistic?
So I think I'm now the confused one. Do you just have this image in mind and then in your mind, and or it's kind of practical, this particular, maybe a ginger near you, and then you measure it. Okay, if it's irregular, I don't know what to do.
Ruth, can you give me a specimen you would want to find its magnification, something, a common specimen?
Let's use that because it's kind of definite.
A P as in the one we eat.
Cowpea.
Cowpea, good.
Yes.
So what you do is you get the P, you draw it. on the paper. Okay?
Yes.
Now, because a P is round or spherical, you're going to measure the diameter of your what? Of your P. Okay, you have drawn. And then you also get the one that you have in your hands and you measure the diameter. Or you get the one you have in your hands and put it in the drawing you have made. I'm assuming that when you're drawing the P, you're not going to draw it the same size, because in biology, we usually prefer detailed images. Are we together? So your image is most likely going to be bigger. You understand?
Yes.
So it means now if I get my P, assuming I had 10 P's, or 10 P's can fit in my image I have drawn, it means my magnification will be times 10. If I fit 10 P's without leaving space, okay? It means what I have drawn, I have made it 10 times bigger, because 10 actual P's can fit in the image or the drawing. Is that clear now?
That's one last question because of time. What about the irregular ones like Jinga? And is this magnification considered when marking that I must calculate and then
okay, what happens is
get
this.
the answer, calculate the magnification?
What happens is that we have a range of answers. There are some answers that are very absurd, if I can put that way, that are not realistic. We ask ourselves, what is the biggest possible size of a ginger that this learner can have been given? And what is the possible smallest size of a ginger? You get me? Then we mark in between there. Because if, for example, you are told to draw a cockroach, let me just use a cockroach, and then you draw the leg, and you say your leg is times 5, okay? And when you say it's times 5, when in reality, 5 legs cannot fit in the drawing you have made, then we cross you. Because at least most people know the size of a what? A cockroach. The biggest possible cockroach is the size of your thumb, probably. You can look at your thumb. Okay? And the smallest possible cockroaches live around these small ones, which are called the German what? Those small ones, which are a nuisance. They usually bring Pediplaneta americana, those ones found in toilets. The possible smallest one will be about half of your thumb. So as the marking is being done, we bear that into consideration. We try to be as fair as possible. But it's just that some learners are not they don't use wisdom when they are doing their work. They just throw answers, okay? And when you throw answers, then we say, but no, this cannot be true, okay? I hope that makes sense. So the bottom line is this. Try to ask yourself that question always. How many of my actual object can fit in my image, or vice versa? Once you have sorted that, your magnification will always fall within line. But besides that, the space provided is already known. You're usually given maybe slightly above a quarter a page to draw. And if you draw something that does not correspond to that, then you will lose marks. I don't know if it is clear, but luckily for some of us who are now in this new curriculum, the way things are set may slightly change, but the principles will remain the same. Okay?
Okay, teacher.
The nature of the practicals is going to change. And these ones are more demanding. They require actual understanding of content. because you are going to design your own experiments, like I think you've been doing in class. So it's very important that all those things are understood. So the discussion was quite enjoyable. It's unfortunate it's coming to an end. So we'll begin from there next time. I'll just take a few questions or observations and then we call it a wrap.
Sharia, your hand has been up. I request Alan still to raise your hand if you still have a question. Sharia first.
Hello. Good
Yes,
afternoon,
please speak.
everyone. So this thing about magnification, me, I'm literally still confused. Teacher said you can multiply by 2 or by 5. I really don't get it. What if the thing is small or if it's irregular? Okay, I'm really confused about it because we have been learning to draw diagrams and all that, and I've never told us about magnification.
I think you are misquoting me. I did not say you must multiply by 2 or 5. I think others can bear me witness.
Okay.
What I have said, magnification simply means seeks to understand whether your drawing is bigger or smaller than the actual object you have drawn. Let me talk slowly, maybe it will be easier. So, if the object you have drawn is bigger than the, rather image you've drawn is bigger than the actual object, then you have to tell us how many times it is bigger by writing the magnification. It can be 1.5 times bigger, it can be 2 times bigger, it can be 2.5 times, 3 times, 4 times, depending on the space you have. But the bottom line is you must communicate accurately. But there are instances where the image you have drawn is actually smaller than the object you were given. So the question is, to what, how small, how much smaller is it? Okay. Is the thing half the actual object? Is your image half the actual object? Then you multiply times a half. Is it a quarter of the actual object? Then you multiply by a quarter or times 0.25. Okay. Or maybe they are the same size. Then you multiply times 1. I hope this time it is clear. Okay.
Okay, let's Sharia, I think you can type in the chat if you still have any other complaint. Alan?
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes, please.
Thank you for that opportunity. Teacher, about the thing of the imagination.
Magnification.
The magnification thing. Teacher, in case like it's like a they have given us like it's a practical. Then they have given us like a certain plant like a tomato, like to find a magnification of a tomato. So I was inquiring, so how can we explain that that is the imagination, the magnification of that what? Of
okay.
that
tomato.
Of that, yeah.
Okay, the answer is like this. If you have been told to cut the tomato into a half, you are going to cut it into a half, then draw what you're seeing. Then get a ruler, measure the tomato itself, record it somewhere, measure also that drawing you have made. So you're going to measure maybe the length, usually preferably the longest part. Measure the longest part and measure also the longest part of the tomato. And then substitute in the formula, image size divided by object size, the object being the actual tomato. The answer you get is the magnification. So if you got an answer like 1.8, that one you can easily round off to times 2, okay? You say times 2. Or 1.9 is the same as times 2. If you go to 1.5, then you write times 1.5, okay?
Teacher.
Yes.
There's also this time when they tell you that like to draw the what? The magnification like of the plant that you have seen, like the object. Now after dividing the tomato into between, then you afterward drawing that plant onto the paper after drawing it. So after I drawn it on the paper, so there's a time they put for us also the magnification. So should I extend it from the paper where I've drawn it, or I use the real image?
It's unfortunate I've not understood your question.
Teacher was asking that there's a time they give us a question like we draw the after the whole stuff, then afterwards the magnification that you have got, then they have told us that after dividing that tomato that they have given us, then after dividing the tomato, you draw it onto the paper. After drawing it onto the paper, then I want to find the magnification. Should I use the drawn diagram or the real image to estimate my magnification?
Well, the magnification, like I have said, you need two measurements. The measurement of the actual thing you are drawing and the measurement of the drawing you have made. So the measurement of the orange or tomato, okay, that's what we call object size, and the measurement of the drawing you have put on paper, what we call the image size, because what you have drawn is an image. Then you substitute into the formula. Image size over object size.
Thank you, teacher, for that one. Teacher, what of also this number, the letter part B, like swollen with food, which is idealized and provides energy and sproutes into a new plant. I never understood it, teacher.
Okay, if you look at ginger or an Irish potato, those two are stems, and these stems are succulent or they are swollen. Yes. They are swollen because they contain a lot of food in them. Okay? So yes, we say they are swollen, the stem is swollen with food. So why should it be swollen with food? The food is going to be broken down to provide energy for the developing new plant. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we cannot exhaust all the questions now. You can keep some questions for the next lesson. I think we'll stop here.
Thank you, teacher.
Okay. Ruth, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay.